Bill, when did you join the service?
I went in August 1943. Finished high school in May and went into the service. During boot camp, we were given a series of tests. At the end of boot camp, I had made grades that entitled me to go to school, so they sent me to hospital school.
Mm-hmm. Bill, as you know, probably the greatest military invasion in history took place in June 1944 when the Allies invaded Europe to take the continent back from the Germans. Where were you on June 6, 1944?
June 6, 1944, I was at the D-Day there at Normandy. We got in there. We did not hit the beach because it had not been established, but we got in close enough that the Seabees could come out, unload us, equipment, personnel, supplies, and then they brought casualties into us all night long, the wounded, the dead. We got loaded in time to, when the tide came back in, we could get out. We headed back to England with our load of casualties, and so we were, June the 6th was there, D-Day, and left early the morning of the 7th, headed back to England with a load of casualties.
After your ship took the casualties and those that were dead back to England, you returned to Normandy. What happened after that?
Well, actually I made 3 trips in, and started on the 4th trip, which was June the 19th. We was to hit the beach right after lunch with another load of supplies, troops. At that time, we hit a mine that, a very heavy mine that had been placed there for a battleship or a heavy cruiser or something like that. And but one of these swells went out and would let us drop right down on the mine, and it just simply blew us out of the water. LST was 328 feet long. About a third of it, roughly, midship was, well, almost pulverized. It was just, wasn't anything left. Humans, metal, wood, or anything else. It just pretty well pulverized it. I happened to be on the bow and got off onto a life raft, hung one arm over a balsa life raft. One of the other medics from Mississippi was on there with me. We picked up, I believe it was 4 if I remember correctly. I know one of them died. He was dead when we last I saw him. Another one very likely died. The other 2 were in good shape. They just had some bruises and scratches. But we were picked up then off this life raft by a small boat, LCVP, and this was all probably 25 foot long, 10 or 12 foot wide, which was unable to compete with the swells and the rough tide at that time, and we could not make it into the beach, first aid station, so we were picked up by a Liberty ship, and the skipper was very good to us. First thing they'd done, they wanted us to eat a good meal, which was impossible to eat, and gave us a cabin, the 2 of us, the other medic, myself. No way we could sleep. We were just reliving the activities of that day. Some 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, I don't know. If I remember correctly, he rolled over and he called me. He said, "Are you asleep?" I said, "Jack, I don't think I'll ever go to sleep again." But, well, he said, I can't sleep either. So we got up and went outside on the open deck. There's a bench back next to the bulkhead there. And we sat on that bench and just relived the day. Every so often, battleships on one side of us, the beach over here, they'd fire back and forth. But we didn't even light a match to light a cigarette because we didn't want to give our position away. But it was that night that I wondered why that my life had been left. We had lived in a compartment there on the LST, about 25 foot long, 10 foot wide, roughly 18 of us in that little space. Bunks were 3 high, and had become very, very close. And then to see those fellows that parts I've left of them, it was very hard. And I knew that some of them were married, some of them had children, and would never get back. But it was hard for me to understand why. I didn't even have really a girlfriend at that time. So, I made some decisions that night.
What kind of decision?
Well, that it was something greater than luck that had pulled me through, and I've lived with that power ever since. But was picked up then by another LST and came back into England, into R&R camp, and got in there one afternoon right after lunch, headed for chow that night, and it had been raining I don't know how long, and mud was ankle deep. And about I guess 50, 75 feet in front of me, I saw this little duck-legged guy walking in that mud, and I thought, that's Ed Phillips if I ever saw him. And you talk about splashing mud. We did. It was a great reunion, and because he had thought I had been killed, and I thought he had. He was on the stern when we got hit, and I was on the bow, and we didn't see each other until that was the first occasion we had. But
so two guys from the same town were on the same ship.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But and that didn't happen too often, but we managed to stay together.
Bill, is there anything else you'd like to share as we close out the interview?
Oh, I don't know, Ursel. There's many, many stories that could be told, but I was in a part that my job was to save lives, not take lives. And I've been very, very thankful for that. I don't know how many lives I saved. Can't say that I really saved any life, but I feel like that somewhere along the way I did.
Well, thank you for sharing with us.
Well, I appreciate your interest very much, Ursel. It's hard to tell, but if things like this aren't told, it won't be long before they'll never be known.